understand the mystery. First take a look at the history. The words we use will give us clues. So join us now in Church Chatter. Welcome to the Church Chatter podcast, where we unpack a different church word or phrase each week. I'm Sam. I have my doctorate in language and culture, and I study religious linguistics.
And I'm Dillon. I have a Master of Divinity, and I'm an ELCA Lutheran pastor.
Today is episode 31.
Wow.
And we're kind of taking it back a little bit to the basics, although there's some depth here, and we're talking about the word religion. So let's just start with the word, right? So Cicero, you've probably heard that.
Oh boy. Wow. I didn't know you were going there.
Yeah. He was a Roman public speaker, also called an orator, but I hate that word. It feels jargony to me.
An orator.
Mm-hmm.
Well, sometimes they, like someone will say like, oh, you're a great orator. Sometimes people will say, oh, you're a great orator.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that just means public speaker, right? Yeah. So he was before Common Era. I think in the first century before Common Era.
Mm-hmm.
Was he? Do you know?
I think he was, before.
Well, he was before Common. I know that for sure. He was before Common Era. It's like before the year 1, like before Jesus, right? And he defined religion as coming from the words meaning again, and I don't know if I'm saying this right. Legere is a transliteration. Legere or legere, I've heard it lots of ways, meaning to read, to go over, or to carefully consider. So for him, again, this was thousands and thousands of years ago, a few thousand years ago, religion was about going over or considering again. And then a little later, there were some early Christian writers in the 4th century, so a few hundred years after Cicero, and they defined religion as meaning again. So you still have this again thing, right? And ligare, legere, meaning to bind. And now I really like this definition. So religion was defined as to bind again, pointing to the binding of creation to its creator. So we can use Christian language, God and humanity, or I even like God and creation because it goes beyond humanity. There's also non-human animals, there's earth, there's plants, right? Just all of life. But God and creation, there was a separation for whatever mysterious reason, and religion is what rebinds.
Ooh, that's
right?
good.
Right?
Yeah.
So really, religion, L-I-G is in there, right? Like lig is connected to the word ligament. Religion means to re-ligament. I love this because ligaments are what literally holds our bones and flesh together. It holds us together very physically. So to re-ligament would mean that we would first have to come undone. So religion brings us back together. By the way, this is why religion is often made most accessible and meaningful after somebody struggles and falls apart. You can't be re-ligamented if you can't be like put back together or rebinded if you don't first fall apart a little bit. I tend to believe that religion comes after the struggle. Like people with a deep spirituality often know suffering, which on a long enough timeline, don't we all? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But you see people going through a divorce or losing a loved one or any number, or addiction, right? Just any number of suffering and struggles, any number of reasons for suffering or struggles. And that's whenever religion tends to hold some power for them now. Maybe before that they didn't really care. Do you know what I mean?
No, I do.
I'm not saying that's the only way, but it seems to be something about it. You can't be put back together if you don't first fall apart. There's something there. So religion brings us back together. So remember, ligament, religion, ligament, right? These words are all connected. And then
it also I'm thinking that in St. Paul's letters to the Corinthians, both 1 Corinthians and 2 Corinthians, Paul writes about, this is obviously Christian language, but about the body of Christ working together, all the ligaments working together. He says, you can't have the head without the body, and you can't have the arms and the legs without so all of this. So once you lose one thing, the whole thing's not working together.
Yes. The word religion, very linguistically, is connected to wholeness.
Yeah.
So like this binding, this bringing together, this re-ligamenting, it's very connected to wholeness. And linguistically, wholeness is connected to the word holy. It's connected to shalom is about wholeness, right? All of these Jewish peace, right? Shalom is about peace. So you see all these words are pointing at the same thing. Wholeness, peace, binding together,
but it's all
bringing
about,
together.
and it's very communal.
Oh yeah, I'm going to talk about that.
Okay.
I'm for sure going to talk about that.
Yeah, because...
You and I talk about that all the time, but yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we can both talk about it. But so I just want to finish with the etymology quick. Later on in Latin, the word religion was used so it was always connected to gods and divinity, right? And this like great mystery. And kind of binding us to it and then keeping us together as humans. But later in Latin, religion was used to describe a careful observance of rituals and a sort of obligation to the gods, right? It was defined as a reverence for what is sacred, and it became really connected to moral obligation throughout history, right? Mm-hmm. And then it evolved into the 12th century Old French language to be related to piety and devotion to a specific religious community. And this is where our current English word religion comes from. So, I mean, that's just, you could write a whole book just on this word religion and what it has meant throughout history, or at least known history and written down history, preserved history. But I really love the way of thinking about the word religion to mean re-ligament, or meaning hold us together, connected to this wholeness. That's my favorite.
No, I think that's very good. Also, I would like to just share. I have a great book. It's called World Religions, and it's written by John Bowker. And John Bowker is a priest in the Church of England, and he's one of the foremost scholars of religious studies, and making religious studies actually a concentration that one can actually seek a degree in. And this started almost about 45 to 50 years ago, that people would study religious studies, not just religion in terms of like preparing to be a minister or a priest or a rabbi or something, but to study all world religions. And John Bowker, as I said, this priest in the Church of England, started this religious studies program at Trinity College, Cambridge in England. And he writes in his book this, in asking the question, what is religion? John Bowker says, religion and being religious can mean almost anything, since it deals with the whole human life and death.
Oh, that's such a good segue into what I want to talk about.
So, when someone says, are you religious? Everyone should be saying yes.
Yeah, I have a feeling that your outline and my outline are pretty much the same thing, because you and I have talked about this extensively already.
But most people, I shouldn't say most people, that's not necessarily true, but a lot of people, if you ask them, are you religious, they would say no, or they'd actually say a hard no.
Or they say something that I can't stand.
I think I know where you're going with this.
I'm not religious, I'm spiritual.
Oh, I have some good statistics about
I hate it.
that ickiness.
Yes.
but I think if you look at religion, or religions plural, and you take John Bowker, who is a Christian pastor in a rather large denomination, the Church of England, who is also an academic and a scholar of religious studies in all religions, and you look at his definition of what is religion and being religious can mean almost anything, since it deals with the whole human life and death. And can I just share something real quick?
You don't have to ask.
I know. I just didn't want to go like off of our thing here. So if you really think about it, so I'm a pastor. I'm a Lutheran pastor. And just for instance, today I had a funeral this morning, and I was with a family who was grieving the loss of a loved one. And there was ritual around being at a cemetery and saying prayers and laying flowers and throwing dirt and speaking and telling stories about the one whom has gone on to be in the great beyond with God. And then I left there and I went to the hospital with someone who is also still very much living and yet is also actively dying. And I did rituals there with them and spent time with them there. And just this past week, including our two daughters, I prepared young children for the first time to take Holy Communion. A life passage, a moment, a milestone in their life which continues them to get deeper into the story of sharing the meal, which is a communal meal of bread and wine, of Holy Communion. So when we really talk about the whole human life, from birth to coming of age, to life passages of getting married, to unions of coming together, when you think about religion that way, I think about, I baptize a young baby, a young infant, and then you prepare them for Holy Communion, and then they might get married. So it's the whole life.
Religion is about being religamented or being bound together again. Like we fall apart and then religious acts or rituals bring us back together. And when I teach sociology to college students, something that I drill into them is what is true at a micro level, below it up, it is also true at a macro level. We see this in every discipline. The way cells behave, there are parallels to the way planets and universes behave and galaxies behave. Do you know what I mean? So if you want to know what a culture is like, go study one or two individuals from that specific culture, and you'll have a pretty good idea. If you want to know what a group of individuals are like, or even one individual is like, study that large culture or nation, and you'll have a pretty good idea. Because what's true inside of us is also true outside of us. That's why I have this thing. I'm going to go on a little bunny trail because I think it matters here. I have this paper over here, and I have a list. Dillon watched me make this list of all the things that bother me. One of them on there is, it just pisses me, billionaires just piss me off, right? It's just the moment, it's in the zeitgeist, it's not a unique point of view, this is not a hot take. They piss me off. So I have this practice that I'm doing constantly, and I have a physical list over here. I'm like, okay, I get so angry when I see billionaires out in the world just being greedy. So that's large. That's like a huge thing, right? But can I take that and turn it inward? Well, that also means that I'm so, I'm going to use the word disgusted, but with my own greed. I feel like I've said this on this podcast before.
You have, but I think it's a good
so
note.
What is true at a large scale is also true at a small scale. Anything that we're frustrated outside of us with, we can look inward and find it. And you've got to start there. So to be religious means to have rituals. You can't have religion without rituals. We are all religious people. We all have rituals on like an independent kind of scale, on a small, micro, daily, individual scale. We have rituals that hold us together. If you blow that up and look at a church community, that's all a church community is doing, is we have rituals that keep the community together, like baptism and marriages and all kinds of things. I also think too, like for instance, like in the Christian tradition, we just celebrated Holy Week and Easter. We have these special holidays that bring us together and link us in a common way, to which we celebrate these moments and these stories that bring us transformation. And so if you're a person that likes
festivity and holidays almost exclusively, unless you're talking about maybe, the 4th of July, or you're talking about Memorial Day or Labor Day or something like that. Mm-hmm. Holidays, for the most part, come out of religious traditions.
Yes, but I want to start by talking about individual religious behavior and then blow it up and talk about communal. Because I feel like a lot of people, if you're listening to this, you're probably not anti-religion, but a lot of people who are like, oh, I'm not religious. Yes, you are. Yes, you absolutely are. You're religious about something. So, because there are rituals that hold your life together, and then we'll talk about communities and communal rituals and why they play a part in religious communities. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, first, let's say that rigidity towards rituals in our lives, I've said this before too, but like being super rigid towards rituals is often a sign that somebody does not feel safe. And this could mean they don't feel safe in this universe at like a really existential level, or maybe with people in their home, or maybe from their own bad habits and addiction, or from like unprocessed traumas. They just feel unsafe for whatever reason. And some people dip in and out of that, right? If you're feeling like overwhelmed or like I'm not safe because my house is messy, right? I get like that, as Dillon knows well. When I start to feel overwhelmed and unsafe, or like something's wrong. Is it raining?
I think it's raining.
If you hear noise, it's because it's raining outside all of a sudden.
I'm just thinking if we have windows open.
No, I just cracked them. It's fine downstairs. Okay. So
Sorry, personal note to there.
So, if a person doesn't feel safe, we all have religious rituals. We all have rituals in our life. But if a person doesn't feel safe, they can become especially rigid about these things. Without rituals, we would fall apart though. Even the healthiest person has rituals. They might just hold them a little more loosely. So I'm going to ground it and give some examples from my daily life that I do religiously, or at least whenever I do them, everything goes better, right? My day goes better when I start by making my bed, right? It's a ritual. You wake up, make your bed. I will wake up usually before Dillon, and I read a few pages first thing in the morning from a book.
When she means get up early, she means like at 4:00.
I haven't been waking up that early recently. I've been prioritizing sleep, but I'm a 4 a.m. kind of person. And that's another ritual of mine. Even the ritual of waking up and reading and writing, which is very important to me. My life is better when I build it around this ritual. I have micro rituals within that. I come to my desk where I'm sitting right now, and I have all these images that are important to me, pictures and things that are important to me. I always light a candle. I have a lemon candle right here that I lit before this podcast episode. It's a ritual. I light a candle. This ritual grounds me because I can be somebody who's really in my head. So having the smell of the candle keeps me present. Sometimes I'll put my hand around the warm candle so I can feel the warmth. I know that sounds really cheesy, but it's a ritual, right? It rebinds me. It brings me wholeness. So I'm not only in my head, but also in my body. Coffee, right? That's a ritual. For a lot of people, they have many rituals around their morning coffee or tea or whatever it is. I check my calendar and to-do list, right? This sounds like, oh, she's just listing a schedule, just things she does. No, if you give it meaning, it can be ritualistic, and all these things have meaning for me, right? More and more, especially because our girls are not babies needing me every moment. Going for a walk almost every day when weather permits, or I have a treadmill here in the office, is becoming ritualistic. I almost can't function if I don't go walk for 30 to 60 minutes a day somewhere. I start to just have more nervous energy, right? Do you have some ritualistic things you do?
Yeah, so...
You're a meditator.
So I'm very much a meditator. I'm a person of... many people that know me probably wouldn't know this, but I am very much a person of silence. Most people, when they see me, I'm talking because I'm a pastor, and I'm helping them. A lot of times I'm listening, but I'm very much a meditator, and I know it sounds cheesy because I'm a pastor, but prayer is very, very important to me, and I'm not talking about sitting there with my hands folded and my eyes closed, but prayer and meditation and silence are very, very important to me. I'm also a candle lighter, and I love to light a candle and reflect on the flame in silence for some meditation and prayer. And I find great solace in that, the lighting of a candle. I'm also, I haven't done it recently because I've run out, but I am in our office here at home. I don't do it so much at my church office, but I light incense. And one of the things about religion, as this episode is about, you will find the use of incense in many of the world's ancient religions and even modern religions. I remember being at Gettysburg during chapel services, and incense was used there, and sometimes I miss it. It opens you to a more meditative and prayerful state. I also... A part of my ritual, though, is like getting up and going down and taking out our dog. I always give her a little treat and pet her. I love our dog, and most recently I've been doing a lot of breakfasts with our girls, and that is both ritualistic and meditative, and also deeply frustrating.
He does it so I can. I'm very much a morning person, and I need a little bit of time to get dressed and get ready and just sit at my desk for a little bit.
But it allows me to spend time with our daughters, and I'm a breakfast person. I like breakfast, so recently it's been French toast and juice and things. But I enjoy that.
These sound like daily tasks, and if you're interested in this kind of stuff, there's a book by Tish Harrison Warren. It's called Liturgy of the Ordinary, Sacred Practices in Everyday Life.
Yeah, she's an Episcopal pastor. She's very good.
It's so good. But the point is, I know some people are just completely against religion. And listen, institutionalized religion, I get it. I'm not going to sit here and be like, oh, religion, it's great. I get it. It has done some bad things. It has caused harm. I'm also not here to be like, everybody should go to church and be part of religion. That's not what I'm saying. But...
Nor am I.
Right, like I do understand why some people can't set foot inside of a church. I get it. But if we're going to recognize the harm that religion has done, we should also recognize the good that it has done. If churches and religious organizations were to shut down tomorrow, we would have a lot of people who were unhoused and went hungry and went without electric and heat and all kinds of things. Churches fill in the gaps. Not even the gaps, more than the gaps. Churches are supporting people in need. So we need to have both of those conversations. Go ahead.
Yeah, and also I think of like church, like a lot of people, so people that are kind of on the spiritual but not religious journey. And I'm not trying to be patronizing or nasty when I say this, but they look at religion as just providing like values and principles and morals and ethics. And that is a big part of religion. But religion is taking those morals and ethics and principles and values and putting them into action in the world through, yes, the individual, but also the community. And so I always go back to that passage that's in St. Matthew's Gospel in chapter 5, verses 40. And Jesus is recorded to have said, what you do unto the least of these, you do unto me. So what he is saying is, when you see someone that's in need, whether they're hungry or they're unhoused, or maybe they're struggling with addiction and dependence, maybe you see the earth being polluted, your streams and your farmland and all these things. Maybe it's a person who's sick. Maybe it's a woman who has recently had to terminate a pregnancy, and there's a situation of that going on. Maybe it's a person in the LGBT community who is being discriminated against. It could be anything. And when you look at that person and they are in need, or maybe it's you. Maybe you're the one who's in need. Maybe I'm the one, or Samantha's the one that's in need. When you see that person, you're supposed to act out those morals and ethics and principles and change the world. That's the whole point of it. So you see God in other people. Not that you're God, but that you have a piece of God. And so
We interpret that through our individualistic nature sometimes, though. Like, I know some people who are just so against religion, and fine, that's your prerogative. That's fine. There's any number of reasons that are valid. And yet, they're like, they want to do good in the world. And I get that. And there's a lot of ways that can happen. But the benefit of institutionalized religion, when done well, is when you see somebody asking for money on the side of the road and you give them a $20 bill, that's fine and dandy. But there's something to a community who is consistently doing fundraisers and like raising money and taking that money and giving it back to the community and giving money and food to food banks.
And I think of our
coats to give away, and like just consistently in that effort with people together.
Well, and I think of our own. I mean, all churches and synagogues and mosques and temples. They all do these things.
Right.
But what's interesting is that, like, and this could be argued many ways, but okay, so our church has a place and a space for the worship and continued teachings on morals and ethics and values and principles. We have that space, a space of worship. But we also have a place and space where we can feed people, where we can care for them, where we can collect coats, where we can collect food, where we can collect, one of the things that we're collecting right now and going to distribute is aging people find it very expensive to be able to buy adult underwear, adult diapers. And so most people aren't individually collecting that and then distributing it. It's places that have places and spaces to do that, and it's working together. Volunteers that are coming together and doing a distribution day or doing a hot meal, a community meal. So once again, religion, the religious aspect about it is, I don't want to start us on this, but anybody can be spiritual. You can sit in your house and light a candle and say a prayer. Sure, that's spiritual. You can read a sacred text with yourself for personal devotion. That's spiritual. Anybody can do that, right? But there's a difference of religion, which is the formal community bringing people together to do, I don't want to say greater things, but things that it's a much larger at a much larger scale and capacity. And I always go back to that quote from Jesus of, what you do unto the least of these, you do unto me. So seeing God and humanity and other people and making the world a better place.
Right. So like at an individual scale, I know, again, there's all kinds of different people. I'm just going to stop with the disclaimers. Obviously, everybody can do and believe and participate in religion however they want. But I know some people who are against religion and they go to CrossFit 5 times a week, and if they miss one session, they are distraught.
Or they feel guilty.
They feel guilty, right? They like can't stand it. Or they're like, I gotta go for a bike ride in the morning. I gotta go for a run because I'm doing that biannual half marathon that I do, right?
Or they go to yoga or...
Well, I'm going to talk about yoga in just a minute,
okay.
Right? So these are people who are doing these things religiously. Just because they're not showing up to a church, and especially with like exercising or like certain diets, right?
There's a community effort.
It's a community effort, but they also will be, they will internalize the negative parts of religion as well. They will proselytize, right? Like, people go to church, and oftentimes the posture can be, everybody just needs more Jesus in their life. If people went to church and had more Jesus in their life, they would be saved, they would be better, right? I can see how that comes off as snooty. I totally get that. But people do the same thing when they're religious about exercise. Everybody needs to go to the gym 4 to 5 times a week, and we would just be healthier, and we would be saved, we would be better. Everybody needs to do the high protein, low carb diet, blah, 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 and we'd be better. We'd be saved, right? Like, people treat these spaces and these rituals that they have found wholeness and religamenting, rebinding that has helped them feel wholeness. They think they want to push it on everybody, right?
Well, and it's really interesting too, because I think I might get myself in trouble with this, but I'm gonna piggyback off of you if that's okay, and say this. A lot of times I talk to people in all different places in their life, really good places, really bad places, everything in between, and often I'll get. I'll say, oh, would you be interested in doing something like this? Or would you be interested in doing something like that? Or, oh, if you're, would like to get involved, that there's these different types of
Are you
things.
talking
Or
about
worship.
people outside of the church?
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, okay.
That come to our events or something like that, and they're interested, they're curious. They usually ask me. I'm not, even though I'm a pastor, proselytizing, which means like trying to like share the faith. I'm not really good at that, nor do I really want to be. But many people are interested, and so that they ask me. And a lot of times I will get people that say, I'm just not really interested in being told what to do. I'm not really interested in the rules that come with religion. To which I say, well, there's rules that come with a diet. And there's rules that come with going to a yoga community. And there's rules about driving on the highway that you have to follow. And so if you look at it as just kind of these black and white rules and you make it terrible like that, sure, I can understand how you can see that. But
I don't think of them as rules. I think of it as structure.
Well, sure.
Also,
so do
in
I.
the context of most Christian denominations, what rules? You get to go to a church service and you don't have to do anything but sit there. You don't have to be a certain way. You can just be there. Now, some churches have rules about who can be a member. Our church, anybody can be a member as long as you're baptized, and anybody can be baptized. But what rules? Like, it's not...
I think what... I shouldn't say I think. Some have...
People don't want to be put into a box of moral obligation.
Yeah, they don't want to be put into a box of certain moral or ethical obligations. Once again, and I'm not trying to, construe these things, but I mean, have you ever driven on a road with no lines? It gets a little messy.
Yes.
Have you ever gone to a lot of people go to, hold on, can I say that? A lot of people go to yoga, and I think yoga is beautiful. This is not an anti-yoga statement, but many people go to yoga because there's a great there's a great yogi, or there's a great person who's leading it in the community. Mm-hmm. Many people go to CrossFit because they like the coach. And the coach is getting them,
coach there?
moving them. A lot of there's a program. Yeah. There's moving. There's structure. There's moving together. So
I have something interesting to say about that.
That's just my.
Jesus died on Good Friday. He descended to the depths on Holy Saturday is when we commemorate it, and then he resurrected on Easter Sunday. That is the path to everything. We already talked about that on one of our episodes, but. Death, descent, rise. This is the pattern of transformation. This is the pattern of everything. Our culture is currently, again, if it's true at an individual level, so it's true for Jesus as an individual, it's true for us when we transform, it's also true at a larger cultural level. And I believe that we are in a cultural descent. We are in an elongated cultural Holy Saturday, descending to the depths, right? And it's kind of like a caterpillar. A caterpillar goes into a cocoon, right? Kind of like a Good Friday. The caterpillar dies. And then it resurrects as a butterfly. But in between there is the descent. And it's inside its chrysalis. It's not a cocoon, but a chrysalis. And while it's in there, it's really gooey and formless. And I believe that that's where our culture is right now. We were a caterpillar. And we were just crawling along, and something new is being born. I don't know if we will see it. Maybe our children or grandchildren will see it, but there's a new structure taking place. So I don't know what it's going to look like, but right now we are very mushy-gushy, and people, including me, we don't like structure because structure is being broken down. Just like the caterpillar structure is being broken down in the chrysalis, just like Jesus was dead and supposedly in the tomb with a dead body on Holy Saturday, but then something new. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, well, I do.
I think that we're just in this mushy-gushy thing where people, especially our generation and younger, we don't want the rigid form that we used to have. It's why the structures of male and female are falling apart.
Well, and I do think there's a beauty to that.
One more thing. Even like work. like people who are older than us, when we try to explain to them our schedule, they don't get it. Because working from home and this like Dillon and I do not have 9 to 5 jobs. I couldn't even begin to explain to you. Sometimes we're doing work at midnight. Sometimes we're doing it at 4 a.m. Sometimes we have a 9 to 5 day, but that's very rare. Sometimes we work 3 hours in the morning and 8 hours. It's very weird. And it's like back and forth. Our life is weird. And a majority of people that we know our age, they also don't have this 9 to 5 structure of their life.
Absolutely.
Like I feel like it used to be everything was so rigid. Like you work 9 to 5 or 8 to 5 or 8 to 4 or whatever, right? Like you work those hours and then there's your home life and there's male and there's female and there's like you know what I mean? There's just all these things, and that's all falling apart now.
And I think this is I think it's interesting because what all these kind of binary things of it has to be this or it has to be that is kind of breaking down, and there is a beauty to that. And I think of people of certain generations, they think whatever is coming, they think they're a little concerned about the butterfly to come out of the chrysalis, and my thing is whether or not you like it, there's going to be a different butterfly. So you can start now by helping move forward the butterfly to come. Does that make sense?
It's coming.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Whether we like it or not.
That's what I'm saying. It's coming whether we like it or not, and we can sit back and say, I don't like this, I'm not going to accept it. Or we can live into it and help. I mean, one of the greatest things is that the chrysalis, when it's in there and it's molding, it is literally becoming, it is taking what was once that caterpillar, and it still has that type of component and form, and yet it is something totally beautiful.
Just like the resurrected Jesus.
Just like the resurrected, it still has the form of Christ, but something also totally new. The old with the new together. I also think of what St. Paul...
Transcendent and include.
Yeah, St. Paul says in Galatians, he says when someone becomes baptized, they are no longer they're no longer Jew or Greek. They're no longer slave nor free. They're no longer male nor female. All are one and made in a new image, in the image of Christ. So, I mean, this is in our, if you're in the Christian tradition, this is in our own DNA. The idea that something is always becoming new. There's always new life coming, and religion is bringing together the pieces, bringing together the ligaments, and it brings a little bit of the old with a little bit of the new, but it's always the what is that? I forget that phrase. The arc or the bend of
from the guy
MLK used to talk about it all the time. The arc is always
the arc of justice is long, but it always bends towards
justice.
Towards justice? No. It's something like the arc of life is wrong, but it always bends towards justice.
Right,
something
and so
like that.
So it's always expanding into something better and greater and more connected to the divine.
But we can't have newness. I know this is a bunny trail, but I think it's important. We can't have what is new without giving up some of the old form, like a butterfly, like Jesus, like, right, all these things. Okay, anyway, so let's talk about yoga.
Oh, okay.
Yoga, a lot of people who, and listen, I say this with love and respect, but I'm also somebody who believes in just saying things directly. I used to be somebody who was like, oh, I'm not religious, but I'm kind of spiritual. And what that means for a lot of people is like, you believe in some kind of divine mystery, but maybe you don't necessarily, I'm really being cliche about this, but maybe you don't necessarily want to call it God. I don't know. Or you believe in ghosts.
There's an agnosticism.
Yes.
With it, not an agnosticism with a capital A, but an agnosticism with a lowercase a,
yes.
Which is kind of this like,
Which is a valid response to this reality.
Sure. You're not saying there's not. You're not saying there's nothing. You're not saying that there is something. Kinda.
Yeah. Sometimes there are some people, if you know anything about the Enneagram, Dillon is an Enneagram 2, which means he cares deeply about people and he's a helper. I'm an Enneagram 5, which is a thinker, which means I spend my whole life falling down rabbit holes and learning things and talking about those things I learn. I'm obsessed. Which is to say that Dillon and I are people who are not detached from things going on. But there are some, like I think of Enneagram 9, right? Like there are some personality types who are really, if you don't know Enneagram, you can just ignore what we just said. But there are some personality types who they're not interested in going to the depth of something. And religion, there's a lot of conflict around religion. And a lot of personality types just don't enter conflict. As somebody who tends to be a little more intellectual about things, where I see conflict, I need to go into it. Not to fight, but to understand it. So whenever I entered religion, I went into it. But some people don't like that conflict, right? So I want to be a little sensitive to when some people say that, like, oh, I'm not really into religion. For a lot of people, they don't like the conflict. They're not interested in
And
that,
I can
like,
understand
depth.
that.
Right. There's a validity to it. But there's a stereotype. People who are like, oh, I'm not religious, but I'm spiritual. Number one, I'm going to just drop this in there. Everybody's spiritual. Rob Bell, if you know who he is, really helped me with that. Everybody and everything is spiritual. Whenever somebody says, oh, I'm spiritual, I don't even know what that means anymore. I've just redefined it of like, yes, everything is spiritual. Everybody is spiritual. You're not, that's not a hot take.
And
I don't
actually,
even know, that's like saying I'm a person. Like,
right.
yeah, of course you are. Like,
and
yeah.
actually the spiritual, so this is a little bit of dated data, but the Pew Research Center, which is a major research center in the United States, the Pew Research Center put about in about 4 or 5 years, about 4 or 5 years ago, they put out something. It's probably a little higher now, honestly, but that 21% of American adults say they're spiritual, but they're not religious.
Almost like a quarter.
21% say they're spiritual, but they're not religious. And then 58% of American adults still say they are religious and they are spiritual. So they're both. So that means that they're probably personally spiritual, but they also probably are connected to some type of formal or institutionalized religious tradition.
I don't even know what people mean by that.
But 21% is quite high, actually. And it's probably even a little bit higher now, because this was about 4 or 5 years ago that Pew Research put this out. But 21% of American adults say they are spiritual, but they are not religious, which begs the question. There's some more data that goes with this, but I always forget his name. John Bowker, who I stated before, who is who's a pastor in the Church of England and also a religious studies scholar, in his book writes about we are starting to see many people be able to talk about their own spirituality, but they are so disconnected from practicing that within community. And so they kind of, not everybody, this is not a blanketed statement, but they're making it up as they go. Mm-hmm. And they're also, they're making their own, going back to I don't want to follow the rules. They're making their own rules.
Making their own structure.
They're making their own structure.
We are in this cultural moment that resists structure.
Which also, I don't want to take away your thunder, but also we see this with the yoga.
Okay, wait, stop there.
Okay.
Stop there, because let's talk about yoga. Because we keep circling
I just want to
drain.
use one word when it comes to yoga in Western countries, particularly in Europe, Canada, and the United States.
Been colonized?
Not only has been colonized, but it has been misappropriated.
So has Buddhism. When people think, there are some actual people who practice Buddhism, and that is
which is a beautiful yes. religion and philosophy.
But when people are like, oh, I'm really into Buddhism, and they think it's like the cool thing to do, it is cultural appropriation, it is colonization. You are taking a system of faith. I'm not, like, it's...
a
You're
religion
taking this
that actually
and westernizing it and whitewashing it and calling it your own, where you don't even, now some people really do, like I know quite a few people, they are in it, they are like studying Buddhism, they are in it, they are going to some Buddhist communities, they're going to retreats, like they're doing what they can in this area of the world because there's something about Buddhist wisdom that
and
calls
there's also
to them.
some
But
overlaps
there's
in,
other people who just like to say, oh, I'm Buddhist, and they don't have the slightest clue of the depth of this faith. They have no idea. They just, do you know what I'm saying?
well, I do. I mean, when I was in seminary, my systematic theology professor, she was also, she had her PhD in comparative world religions, and she was deeply, deeply troubled with Western countries, like I just talked about, predominantly Europe, Canada, and the United States, misappropriating Eastern religions, in particular Buddhism and Hinduism, misappropriating them, kind of cherry picking what they like out of them, kind of, again, whitewashing the deeply connective rituals and traditions that come with those two world religions, and kind of just making them palatable for kind of a Western
it is tricky in a
exercise
global
routine.
Yeah, but in a global culture, it is tricky because you get nuggets from different religions all the time.
Oh, sure.
So to take wisdom from just something you've heard about Buddhism, it's tricky. Also, I don't want to be a hypocrite. Christianity has also,
of course,
been westernized
of
and
course,
colonized and taken from its roots, its Middle Eastern roots and its Jewish roots, right? And it's just strayed far from what it was, and it's all very tricky.
It is.
It's all very tricky.
It is, and in a world.
Okay, we gotta talk about yoga because we're circling.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
So, the stereotype image of somebody who's like, "Oh, I'm not religious, I'm spiritual," they tend to go to yoga, right? They're like, "Oh, I go to yoga, I go to Bikram yoga, I go to hot yoga, I go to whatever," right? And I used to go to Bikram yoga. I miss it, but. I find it interesting to hear people who deny religion but enthusiastically attend yoga multiple times a week for physical and spiritual satisfaction. I find this interesting. So religion and yoga, they don't just share cultural and spiritual elements, they also share linguistic elements. The word religion comes from the words re-ligament, so to tie or bind together again, right? And the word yoga comes from an Indo-European root for to join together. So yoga, like religion, seeks to re-ligament or to bring together, right? Again, similar to the way ligaments join our bones together for a purpose. So I think that's really interesting. And religious spaces, including church and yoga, they bring together what would otherwise be separate and ultimately contribute to a sense of wholeness, right? So I'm not saying that yoga is a problem. I used to go to yoga back when I lived closer to the Bikram yoga place, and I loved it. People are transformed by it.
Oh, I think.
But if you watch there's any number of them. There are documentaries about the corruption of yoga and different, what are they even called? Like yogi masters, and like the leaders of different yoga communities have done, I mean, there are allegations, and sometimes they're like, it's like, how do you say it?
Well, there's allegations and there is straight up corruptions in all religions.
Yoga included.
Sure.
Leaders who are taking money and getting rich off the backs of these expensive classes.
And that's all.
Sexual abuse scandals from yoga teachers, just all kinds of things. So again, I think it's really important to turn a critical eye towards religion. But we have to turn that same critical eye towards, if we're somebody who's like, oh, religion is so bad, fine. Yes, for sure, there has been some scandals. But turn that same critical eye towards everything that you are participating in then. So you can't say religion is really bad. Some pastors and priests have done bad things. Yes, of course. There needs to be reconciliation for that. But you're going to yoga, you're going to Bikram yoga 5 times a week. Do you know who started Bikram yoga? A man who did some very terrible things and victimized a lot of people. So turn that same eye towards him and towards your Bikram yoga community, and be held accountable for the part that you're playing in that. So I just think that that's important. Do you know what I mean?
And right, and also if you look into the history of the practice of yoga, that comes out of the Buddhist and Hindu religions, you will see that the very earliest poses and stretches and movements for spiritual illumination and bodily transformation, because of yoga being a type of both spiritual exercise. All of these poses and all of these things are coming from poses and named after the very demigods and deities from these religions, and so it is deeply connected to a greater tradition, a religion. And that's what it has come out of. Even in the Christian tradition, I think of, when we talk about, centering prayer, or we talk about walking the labyrinth, or we talk about doing different types of inventories of the mind and these different things. People say, well, I go home every night and I take an inventory of the mind, and I do this. Yeah, that is one of the deepest traditions that comes out of the Jesuit tradition. The Franciscans were one. So a lot of these practices that some people are now picking up in the modern life are very beautiful and wonderful, and they should continue to do them.
But
they just should maybe be a little bit more opened to the history of where they come from.
Yes.
And not be so disconnected to these ancient practices started, and in many ways still are very, very much deeply a part of religion. There's no way around it.
Well, I know that we're throwing a lot of information, but kind of the trajectory of this episode's outline is religion can be individualistic in nature, but religion also lives in this tension with community. Something that I believe, and I think I said this in the last episode, but I am a person, for whatever reason, I need a large amount of alone time. I could very easily retreat to a cabin somewhere and live there alone for a year and never see a soul. However, something that I believe to be very true is our issues and where healing needs to happen becomes evident when we are in relationship with others. If I was by myself for even 2 weeks, I would have very little conflict, but I'd also have very little transformation, because there is no transformation if you don't have a little bit of tension in your life. I don't have any tension when I'm by myself. When I'm by myself, there are no problems. That's not life, though. So your issues and your problems and where you need healing is made evident in community or in relationship with somebody else. Think about a marriage or a close friendship, right? Or family. But the opposite is also true. That's where the healing is. So what needs to be healed is made evident in community, but also that's where the healing is. And that's important, because I want to we talked about yoga, but I really want to segue into community, right? So our capitalistic values of efficiency, growth, competition, commerce, and self-interest, they lead us to believe that experience is all external and individual. However, religion, at its best, it seeks to unite our internal and external experiences by incorporating, again, remember, religament, it's about bringing wholeness, binding us together again, this wholeness thing. Religion incorporates community, bringing community and humanity and people together. It incorporates mind, body, emotion, spirit, right? It brings it all together. And at its best, it contains gatherings, liturgies, rituals to bind parts of us together. You can't just show up to a religious community, whether that's a worship service or an event. You can't just show up and sit there and do nothing. It needs structure. That's what liturgy is. That's what these rituals are, right? Many people prefer yoga to church, and rightfully so, given the harm that Christianity and many religion has done. However, Christianity and religion at large, it needs to take accountability for the destruction done in its name, but it also has to be recognized for the compassion, love, charity, and wholeness and rebinding together that it is responsible for, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think of this though. What religion does that spirituality, individual spirituality lacks is this, and I'd like to give an example. This morning when I was at the funeral, I encourage the group of people that were there. There were about 25, 30 people. We were all standing at the cemetery, and I encouraged them to remember the individual who died and continue to tell their story, to get out their pictures and continue to tell the things that they liked and share those stories with others, the next generation, so that they would be able to remember that person. I say that not at all funerals, but at many. And here's the thing. In some families, that's very much a practice and a tradition, to continue to share those of the past, to share their memory, their life, their connection to who their loved one, and to get out old pictures and stuff. But a lot of times that person will go on and it just becomes their picture. It just becomes a picture, and the stories get lost, and the funny movies get ruined, and the person just becomes the picture. And there is no story any longer because people tend to forget it. They don't know, and they forget, and they lose it. The beauty of religion, the beauty of collective formal religion, is that it comes together and it preserves the story. It just isn't a picture that's on the wall, but it is a living, breathing, storytelling community that continues to tell the story of a person, a teaching, a group. And it is in those communities that is kept up. When you're just doing it individually, a lot of times it peters out, it dies out. You don't have that.
Well, mega churches that are not tied to a larger system, they don't last.
They
more
don't
than
have
a
a long
generation
span of
they
time.
Close,
right. And so you need both religion and spirituality, the both and, to work together. But when you just say, well, I'm spiritual but not religious, you're playing a short game. I'm just going to say it.
Yeah.
And people will take me to the cleaners and they'll disagree with me, and that is totally fine. But it's a short game.
Well,
when you bring the community that is set up to tell the stories, to share the meals, to celebrate the holidays, to do all those things, it is kept intact.
Being part of something that has been around for thousands of years before you and will be around for thousands of years after you, when you go, I'm just going to talk in our specific terms. I know we're talking broadly about religion, but if you go to our church and I'm sitting in the pews, obviously just that church specifically has been there for a long time, a couple hundred years, but, right? A couple hundred years our church has been there?
Well, the congregation is from 1821.
Right.
The building itself is from 1895. Yeah, it's
a few
right
hundred years.
near the Civil War.
But when I think about Christianity at large, and I even, because of the way my faith operates, I incorporate Judaism. So my faith is thousands of years old. Sure, it's evolved in a lot of ways with time. But when I'm sitting in that church, I am saying words that people have been saying, perhaps in another language, and it's been translated, but words that people have been saying for thousands of years when they gather in community, and they will continue saying it for thousands of years after I'm gone.
And they're telling the same story.
My children, if they continue to be a church-going person, and perhaps if I have grandchildren one day, they will be telling the same story, gathering around the same story, singing some of the same songs, saying some of the same prayers, all these things that I say each week. I know this sounds really hokey, but it's like time travel. They're like ancestors who came before me say these things, right? It matters. It's like I'm entering into this flow of something that is much larger than me. So religion, we're really in this community thing. So religion 101 is essentially people recognized early on that we are not in control. There is something else beyond us and bigger than us that is somehow in charge of the arrangement of this reality in some complex and highly debated way, right? So people, a long time ago, they needed rain. They would gather in community to engage in rain rituals, right? And people were getting sick and dying by the masses, so people would gather to cry out and pray for divine intervention from their gods. People wanted the gods on their side, so they tried to keep the gods happy. They made offerings to gods, like parts of their harvest and animal sacrifices, to keep the gods. They did whatever they thought they needed to, in the conventional wisdom of the day, to keep the gods pleased with them, right? We have our own things now. In dominant culture, we think to keep God happy with me, I need to be sexually pure. I need to not get divorced. I need to not lie. I need to make sure I'm giving, right? I need to make sure, right? We have all these things and we think if I do that, then God will be pleased with me and my life will be good, right? It's in the zeitgeist. So they made offerings to the God. They did all these things. Everything revolved around this. Again, I'm talking about thousands and thousands of years ago. Everything revolved around this attempt to keep the gods pleased. But you will see that a lot of us, our lives still tend to be arranged that way, trying to keep God pleased with us. So this served many purposes. One purpose, like think about these rain rituals, right? People would come together because they needed rain so that they could have a healthy crop so they could stay living and feed their community, right? So they would come and pray for rain because it's a drought and they're afraid of famine. They wanted to keep the gods pleased, right? This served many purposes. One, they wanted to please their gods, but two, they were coming together and pointing their suffering in the same direction. I've definitely said this on an episode before, but that is a huge part of the purpose of religion. Religion is just as much about our relationship with divinity, with God, and this great mystery, as it is about our relationship with each other. If people are not getting enough rain for their crops to go and they come together and have rain rituals, this is to please the gods and to pray for rain, sure, but it's also so the community can come together in their suffering and point their attention in the same direction. Otherwise, they would be in conflict with each other.
Right, and that's really interesting. So I have many people in my family, and I used to believe this for some time, so I can't say that I did not agree with them. But I don't agree with them any longer because it's only half the story. And a lot of people will say this, but some people in my own family who I love dearly, and they're doing a great job, but they'll say, well, it's about a relationship, not a religion. Well, that's interesting because I know where they're coming from with that, and I slightly agree, and yet it's half the story. It's not the whole story, because you can't have a relationship with not being told where it's coming from and how to do it and where to go, and that is the role of religion. Religions, plural. And so you would find it difficult to be in relationship with your fellow neighbor and the divine, with God, if there isn't some type of system or some type of principles or morals or ethics or some type of cohesive sacred text or some scriptures or some connection to help you navigate that relationship with your neighbor and the divine. So when someone says, well, I'm not religious, I'm just spiritual, again, it's a nearsighted short game, and it's only half the story. And so many people that say, well, I have a relationship with God, or I have a relationship with Jesus Christ, but I'm not really religious, or I don't need to be in a religion. Well, you're missing a hell of a lot.
Well, it also makes me think, I think I said this on an episode a couple months ago too, but it makes me think of, whenever two people are in a new relationship, right?
Oh, that's always fun.
And they're just so gooey-eyed, staring at each other, right? And everybody else is like, ugh, oh my God. And fine, it's to be expected, maybe for a couple months, right? Maybe even up to a year, depending, I don't know. But if two people are in a relationship and they're just like secluding themselves and it's just them and they're just gazing inward at each other and they're just they've been together for 7 years and this is just all they do. We know inside of us, like, that's it. There's something disgusting about it. There's something not right. There's something not right about it. Like, it's not healthy. Like, what are you doing? Because love, long game, long term, committed, relational love is not, it's about gazing inward at each other, like turning towards each other. I would say it's more so eventually mature love is about turning that attention outward in the same direction. Like the community who's praying for rain, they're not coming to each other and just being like, I really hope that everything works out. I love you so much. Yes, and they're turning their attention outwards together, saying, let's turn our attention to the same direction and let's go and engage in this rain ritual to ask God for rain. Do you know what I'm saying?
Oh, totally.
I think it's the same way when people are like, I have a relationship with Jesus and that's enough. There's something in my gut that's like, ugh, like, yes, again, that's half of the story. It's part of the story, but you also have to come together, whatever that community looks like. For Dillon and I, it's church, but it could be a lot of things depending on who you are. But you've got to join with people and turn your attention outward to feed the hungry, to clothe people who are cold, to house the unhoused, to come alongside somebody that you know who's going through a hard divorce or whatever it is, right? You have to like in the context of marriage, eventually you have to have children so you can turn your focus to them. Get a dog or a cat so you can turn your focus on them. Take up skiing or training for a marathon together. Whatever it is, you have to find something in common to turn your attention towards together, or else all that gazing at each other, you're going to kill each other.
Well, yeah, one of my New Testament professors at Gettysburg once told me, not me, but the class, the most central symbol, the most central sign of the Christian faith is the cross on which Jesus hung. And it's interesting because the cross is both vertical and horizontal, and it's not just about the relationship between God and Jesus, but the relationship is that God came in the person of Jesus, whose arms were wide opened on the cross and in his life, and connected people and showed them a new way of living. And so it is not just the Christian way, or the way of Jesus is not just it's not just about a relationship between you, Jesus, and God, which is a vertical relationship. It is about both a vertical and a horizontal relationship, about reaching out to people, just like Jesus says in St. Matthew's Gospel, what you do unto the least of these, you do unto me. What you do to your neighbor is the same as sharing something with me. You're supposed to connect, religion, the coming together, the connection of ligaments. It's a horizontal and vertical way of being in the world.
Yeah, that's good. So here's what's crazy about life. Now, and this is connected to religion, right? Remember, we talked about individual. Really, the theme of this episode seems to be it's individual and it's communal. It has to be both, right? So remember that I tend to be a really existential person, and I think daily, if not hourly, about the fact that we're here. Like, this is happening. What is happening? I don't know. Nobody is, but it is. We can all agree that it is, in fact, happening. Whatever this is, right? And religion is a way to join with people who are like, hey, what's going on here? I don't know. You don't know either, right? So many cultures throughout history, we've created myths. Remember, myths are always true, sometimes factual. Myths contain glimpses of wisdom and truth and observations about this reality, but they are not always factual and literal. So religions have myths that we gather around to engage with this mysterious reality. Like, I feel like at its core, for me, that's what religion is just a bunch of people being like, hey, I just kind of like dropped in here. Like, I fell from my mom's body and like, what's going on here? Like, I don't know. And religion is kind of gathering around this mystery and like pulling wisdom from throughout the ages that we've preserved to be like, hey, I don't know what's going on here, but about 2,000 years ago, some guy named Saul was like really blind and confused, and I don't know, but I feel pretty blind and confused right now too, and I feel like I'm being transformed.
That's the story this week.
And 2,000 years, look at that, 2,000 years ago, some other guy had an experience and he wrote about it. It's been translated multiple times. And now I have it in my hands and I'm reading it. And like, I don't know, I feel like that's a hint. The fact that this guy, now named Paul, had an experience. I'm kind of having a similar weird experience. I feel like there's wisdom there. That's kind of weird that somebody 2,000 years ago experienced that. Isn't that weird, right? Like, what's happening here? I feel like that's the point. Does that make sense what I'm saying?
Oh, totally.
So something... You know that I can't not talk about science. I have to talk about science. Something interesting about Dillon and I that we won't hash out here, but Dillon and I talk extensively about, is Dillon grew up in a family and home really centered around religion. And science wasn't a huge part of that conversation for him growing up. I, on the other hand, grew up in a home really centered around science and reason. And religion was not really part of that conversation growing up. And as adults, like all adults, we have met each other. Not like all adults, not everybody gets married, but him and I have met each other. And we've had to really merge our lives. And we've had to kind of go on a journey separately and together to reconcile the extremes of these two worldviews. Would you say that's a...
Oh, absolutely.
Safe to... Okay. So... Dillon has really done a lot of learning about science and incorporated that into his worldview and his kind of religious structure. I, on the other hand, don't need to do that because I was handed science and reason and logic as the altar to worship on. I have had to lean more into the mystery and the mysticism and all of that. So I don't have a lot of learning... I have to do a lot of learning around religion and spirituality, and Dillon has and emotion, right? I've also had to incorporate emotion because Dillon grew up with emotion being very freely expressed, and I have grown up really focused on what can be directly seen or observed. Am I making sense? Or am I just rambling? Trying to say it appropriately. So Dillon grew up with a lot of religion, and I grew up with a lot of science and logic, and it's actually really interesting for us to be married because we get to come at this thing called religion from different upbringings and perspectives. So for me, religion, this term religion, has been broken wide open. And there's religion, I mean, as many people as I can think of, they could have religion expressed in a different way. Yoga can be considered a religion, right? But science can also be seen as a religion. Science is a worldview. Science... we treat it like this weird, it's almost culty. And I can say this because my childhood was so much about, and just my upbringing was so much about logic and reason and all these things. But science can be culty. Our culture treats science like it's the absolute truth, but science has been proven wrong time and time and time again. On a long enough timeline, it's like, oh, what we thought was true through science and measuring and observing was actually totally wrong, right? Just Google heresies and you're going to find all these scientists who the church was like, no, you're wrong, because they are disproving something that was previously believed. Even post-Enlightenment and scientific revolution, there are countless discoveries that end up actually being wrong, right? Or need to be shifted in some way. Any comments about that?
Well, no, I just think so. There's religion has, not all the time, but there's a strong historical connection to religion suppressing new exploration when it comes to science, which is a great dismay to religion. And yet, at the same time, we also see a heinous thing that religion has done to scientific exploration. But also we have seen scientific exploration in terms of kind of wanting to propel logic and reason and scientific exploration and get the data. What's the data? Well, sometimes the data comes out that the very people whom you are using, and I'm putting that in quotes, using for your scientific exploration is deeply, deeply racial.
Sexist.
Sexist, homophobic. There's all of these. It denies humanity. So, have we seen an expansion of scientific exploration? Yes, absolutely, which is a beautiful, wonderful thing, and we should continue it. Also, in the medical field, we've had great advances, and yet. The church has also come around and said, Galileo didn't get it wrong.
Right.
Copernicus didn't get it wrong.
Yes.
So
the reason I brought up science to end with here is because a lot of times, like people who are very against religion, I feel like this has really become a defensive episode, like in defense of religion. But in defense of religion, a lot of people who are against religion, they really align with science instead, because they're against the absolutism of religion, but then they just take that same fundamentalist energy and put it towards science, and they make science their God, which I think it's just all expressions of the same mystery, so I don't mind. But I think there's a few ways to engage with religion and science. One way is to go to our religious spaces and rituals for answers, and I used to engage this way. And the reason I brought up my childhood and just my life being very rooted, and a lot of that's just in the culture too right now, is like reason and logic and what can be observed. The reason I brought that up is because I used to engage with religion looking for answers. Like, I want the answers. I want facts. Like, what is it? And I'd argue that a person who has arrived to a certain degree of maturity in their religious lives, engage with religion, this is not a space for answers, but a place for questions that help us be in relationship with the mystery of this reality. And for me, more and more, it's about the questions without answers that bring me deeper into relationship with this mysterious reality, which many of us call God, right? I know that sounds kind of existential and lofty, but it's not even about the answers anymore. I don't even care about the answers as much anymore. It's just that, like, one question leads to 5 more questions, that leads to 10 more questions, and before I know it, I'm going to use the word that I don't usually use, but I am in relationship with this divine mystery that I call God. And some people they're very uncomfortable with that. They want answers, and they think science is going to give them the answers. And I'm not against science, of course. It's a beautiful thing. It's done great things. But science, like religion, can be flawed and has done bad things, right? I mean, just look up science in Nazi Germany, right? Like, they have done bad things in the name of science. So, any thoughts on that? Science can be treated as a religion, and people treat science as an absolute truth, just like some people treat religion as like, this is absolute truth. Instead of what I think it serves a lot of purpose, but one of them is it brings you deeper into this experience here in Earth School.
Yeah. I'm trying to look it up very quickly. Liz Gilbert has this quote about
I know what you're talking about. Is it the thing that's on the Rob Bell documentary?
Yes, and it's so good. She
says, the problem is you have religious people who are all soul with no mind, and that's a problem. I'm paraphrasing here. And then you have people who are into science and they're all mind with no soul.
Correct.
And neither of those things work. You can't be all mind and logic without a soul. That doesn't work. And you can't be all soul without a mind and logic and reason. That doesn't work either. You have to have all of these, which really brings us full circle to wholeness and religamenting, right? Religio, right? I hope that's like the one thing you remember from this whole hour and 20 minutes is it's about religamenting. It's about wholeness and keeping things together, keeping our mind and our soul, whatever that is too, and our spirit and our emotions and our physical well-being and even creation. That's why in church you'll see things like fire and water and oil and all these earthly elements, because it's also about incorporating creation. It's about wholeness
And it's
through and through.
Right, and it's bringing. I always think. I'll close with this because we have gone long, but this might be one of my favorite episodes actually. So there, when we install, meaning we kind of welcome new people who are maybe teaching Sunday school, or they're serving on the church council or doing something like that in the Lutheran Church, at least, we always read a passage about. There's only one Lord and one God, but that one Lord and one God gives all different people different gifts and talents. And when all of those different gifts and talents are working together in one body, in one community, and they're a religion, they're linking together, that's when you see the beauty of the action of people coming together with a common mission and really taking their gifts and talents and both serving the neighbor and giving honor to God. And so I think about like I really like to paint, but I don't think that I'm the best painter. So, but sharing the gift of painting, the gift of playing the piano, the gift of making the pie, the gift of writing beautiful poetry and books, the gift of singing, whatever it is, when all of those things come together to serve God and neighbor, that's when the linkage comes together, and that only happens in community. Mm-hmm. That's where religion, with a capital R, works when it's done well. Mm-hmm. People are bringing their spiritual gifts, their spirituality, and they're bringing it in the religious community, and they're working for the common good of all people to love God and neighbor. So
I'd be upset if I didn't add to your list of gifts real quick some of the less sexy things, like I'm really good at just showing up. I have the discipline. I can show up.
Oh, absolutely.
I can show up
absolutely.
and be a body in this meeting and see what they need. I'm really good at creating an agenda.
Yeah.
I'm really good at making lists of what needs to be done.
Yeah.
Right? Like it's not just the like sexy creative things. It's also the like, I'm good at showing up. I'm reliable. I'm somebody who can fill in the gaps if we need somebody to donate eggs for that breakfast. I'm good at doing.
Or I'll be the one who washed the dishes after the spaghetti dinner.
There you go. Yeah. You know. Right. You don't need to be a skilled, talented, creative.
Oh no. Yeah.
Well, I think we're all creative. You know. Yeah. Anyway, that's besides the point. I just would have been upset if I didn't say it.
No, I think that's great.
Yeah. So our whole point is religion is about wholeness and religamenting, but also it's not. Religion comes in many forms. And it can be expressed individually, but it needs to also, it's about neighbor and God. It's about what is unseen in the deep mystery, but also it's very practical on what can be seen.
And a good holistic religious community that is embracing and helping ignite and illuminate people's spirituality must start from the very moment of birth and must take one up until the end of earthly life. It has to. If you're involved or you're seeking or you're looking at something that's kind of like loosey-goosey, well, a little bit here, a little bit there. No, just like John Bowker says, religion and being religious can mean almost anything since it deals with the whole human life and death. From the very beginning of one being born as a child, all the way up until one's earthly life, even giving the story of what might be the hope of the great beyond.
Well, again, if you're thinking about this ligaments in our body hold everything together. They're throughout our entire body, like the whole thing. It brings stability to the whole thing. You can't have somebody starting a religion when they're 20 years old. I mean, you can. I did it. I was 28. You can. Mm-hmm. But you can't have a religion built around that, right? You have to have these rituals for different stages and seasons for people. They can't only have the option of opting in when they're older. It kind of falls apart, I think. But, yes.
And with that, we encourage you to stay curious.
Stay curious.
To understand the mystery, first take a look